Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Kim Relaford. I'm one of the Work-Life Connections therapists here at UK. And Rhonda, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Rhonda Henry. I'm one of the other therapists here in the work life office, and I'm happy to be here with you all today.
As we're still letting a few people in, if you would take a moment and type your full name in the chat box so we can keep attendance for today's webinar. Throughout our time together today, we are going to be probably moving pretty quickly through this information since we only have an hour, but we want to welcome you to use the chat box to post questions or offer your thoughts, ideas, or suggestions. If we can't get to your questions by the end of the presentation, then we'll use them to consider what other information or ideas we would like to include in future offerings. So please share those with us. You're also welcome to reach out to us or even schedule an appointment with one of us to explore your questions further. And we'll talk about how to do that towards the end of the presentation. So today's training is actually for one of the first of a series of 4 on healthy relationships, all conceived by Rhonda Henry. This is her wonderful idea. And so we know as therapists that relationships are at the heart of all human interaction. And often that's what drives our stress in our lives. So each of these 4 sessions will focus on a different type of relationship. So we're doing family today, friends, intimate relationships, and coworkers. And we're going to cover them in that order because it tends to be the order in which we experience and build relationships. So again, today we're going to be focusing on our relationships with our family. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to explore what family is, why it's important to us. We'll discuss some of the challenges families face, specifically looking at spending some time on challenging boundaries and communication issues. We will then wrap up our time together talking about when you may want to consider letting go of unhealthy relationships. And finally, we will provide and share some further information and resources so you can continue to explore this subject on your own. So let's get started. So throughout this series, we're going to challenge you to begin thinking about your relationship through the lens of your North Star. And so the North Star, it's also called the Polaris, and it's famous for holding nearly still in our sky while the entire northern sky moves around it. So it is the central point with which the other stars rotate. And so metaphorically speaking, your North Star is your personal mission statement. It's a fixed destination that you can depend on in your life as the world changes around you. So for our purposes, we want you to encourage you to think about what your North Star is in your relationships as the touch point you can come back to when you find yourself in conflict with your family or any other relationship. And at the center of this concept is what we call core values. So your personal values are central part of who you are and who you want to be. By becoming more aware of your core values, you can use them as a guide to make the best choice in any situation. So, sometimes life's decisions are really about determining what you value most. And there may be more than one reasonable option or response to, a decision that you're making. So you can then back up and rely on your values to point you in the right direction. I always find that my core values help me to determine what I want to do next, because I ask myself the question, does this serve my core values? And if it doesn't, why am I doing it? So when your life matches your values, when you're operating out of your values, then life is pretty good. When your existence doesn't align with your personal values, that's when things may feel wrong or you may even feel unhappy. So core values at the core are our purpose, direction, and they help us determine our goals. And we're going to provide, again, we know we have such a few amount of moments in this presentation that some of these concepts we would love to explore with you all in depth, but we know we can't. So we provided more resources at the end of the presentation. Again, I'm going to share that with you all in the chat box so you can have the links before the end of the presentation as well. But we'll give you information so you can explore that idea of core values more on your own. So what does this mean when it relates to family relationships? So when determining your North Star elements in family relationships, ask yourself these questions. What do you consider to be family? Why isn't family important to you? What are my family's top values? And how does that align with my personal values? Because those can be different probably similar, but different. And what role does family play in my adult life? So once you have considered these questions, using those answers as guides in your relationship with your family is a way to determine where you want to go next and how you want to delve in and build deeper relationships, or where you don't in your family. So before we go much further, let's stop and think about what family means. When searching for the more succinct definition for this presentation, I found this quote by Stitch from Disney's Lilo and Stitch, and it says, Ohana means family, and family means no one gets left behind or forgotten. If you guys want to take a moment and write your own definition of family in the chat box to share with each other, that would be great. But family means something very different to different people. We have our family of origin, the family that we are born into. Maybe it could be the family we were adopted into. But then as we go through life, we may also have chosen family, people we have chosen to be the place where we feel like we will never be left behind or forgotten. So what does family mean in more detail? Let's talk about what a family does, what a family functions, what are the functions of family. So to break this ideal down a family further, you may or may not be familiar with Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this is a theory of motivation, and it states that there are 5 categories of human need that dictates an individual's behavior. Those needs are physiological needs, safety and security, love and belonging, self-esteem, and self-actualization. If these are the primary needs we experience as humans, where should, and I use that word should deliberately, we first experience those needs being met? Family, right? So saying meeting these needs should be a primary function of family is not a stretch. So think about this from as a child, as an infant. We depend on our family, our caregivers, our caretakers for essentials such as food and water, clothing and shelter and sleep. We also rely heavily on them for safety and security, whether that's protection from physical harm or emotional, and it also is our emotional well-being. As we move through life, those needs might become more complex, and they might also include job and financial security, which may or may not be met out inside your family, or even our overall health. But these essential early needs are definitely what we get from our families and our caregivers. So the next one is love and belonging. And so going back to the idea of no one gets left behind or forgotten, this idea of love and belonging is one of the major functions of a healthy family. This is where we learn how to have emotional bonds with each other. This is where we learn interdependence. We learn who we're attracted to, how to be affectionate. We learn intimacy, healthy intimacy, hopefully, and commitment to one another. This is where we find our sense of acceptance, love and belonging, attention and support by and to others. So that's what love and belonging will provide to you. Again, something that a family generally provides. And then the next one is self-esteem, which is when we value ourselves, the self-respect, self-appreciation, idea of self-love, sense of ourself. So if we have our physiological and safety and security needs, and we've learned love and belonging, we then also learn how to love ourselves. And the final one here on the hierarchy needs is self-actualization. And this is a lifelong learning growth experience. Most people would not consider themselves self-actualized as like I've reached the pinnacle. It's more of a journey throughout their life, where they become to where they realize themselves you're creative or you're intellectual or your potential through some internal drive. It's also where our sense of morality, our sense of what our meaning and purpose in life is, and our acceptance of life the way life is. So most people will find that self-actualization doesn't happen until towards the end of their lives. So if those are the functions of a family, what happens when those needs are not met? And that's where these ideas of family dysfunctions come into play. So it could be current or past abuse, whether it's a verbal, emotional, physical, sexual abuse. current or past addiction, historical grudges, which is when you have anger and bitterness and you feel resentment or negative feelings long after someone has done something to hurt you. Like you hold on to that, or they've held on to a hurt that they've experienced from you. It could also mean family secrets that never are allowed to see the light of day that you have to keep. It could be the experiences of divorce, where some of that love and belonging may have been broken. And when these dysfunctions can be repeated from one generation to the next, it's also referred to as generational trauma. So just take a moment to reflect on how these issues have shown up in your own family and maybe driving the issues you have in your family today. One way that you can look at this in more depth for yourself is something called a genogram. And I'm just going to briefly introduce this to you today because it can be as complicated or less complicated as you want to make it. But a genogram is a way to map your family system. It's a practical framework. It looks for family patterns. It helps you to look and record information about family members and their relationships, generally over at least 3 generations, but you can go up more or down more as you see fit. It looks at, patterns again, like what's profound, how we're profoundly interdependent with each other physically and socially and emotionally, are the functioning of our families impacts us and our growth. And when any of those changes in one part of the system, it reverberates throughout the whole family. Family interactions and relationships tend to be highly reciprocal, patterned, and repetitive. How my mother interacted with the world informs how I interact with the world, may inform how my children interact with the world. These patterns also help us to make predictions from the genograms of issues that we need to address in our current generation if we don't want to pass them on to the next. So I went ahead and developed a quick genogram just to give you an idea of what this looks like. So just looking at this as a whole, you can quickly see that there are some generational issues in this family. Now, for this genogram, I only looked at mental illness, substance abuse, and trauma, just for us to have a quick glance. So this is the genogram for Maya, and she is 36 years old, and Maya has a history of relationship trauma and struggles with mental illness. Maya has an older brother, Chris, who struggles with mental illness, and a sister, Anna, who has a history of intimate partner violence in her past relationships and a history of mental illness and substance abuse. Their mother, Judy, has alluded to childhood abuse by both of her parents towards her and her sister, Christy, but Maya wasn't sure of the details, and her mother also struggles with mental illness. Their father, Jerry, on the other hand, does not drink or use drugs. He has no history of mental health concerns, but Maya knows from her aunts, Becky and Sarah, that their grandfather, Jerry Jr., was an alcoholic who was verbally and physically abusive towards their mother and at times towards his daughters. But Jerry Jr. was a witness to that. He didn't experience it. Jerry Jr. has determined that he is not going to be out of control like his father, and has very rigid ideas of how people should be and act, and has unrealistic ideas about how his children should behave, even as adults. So quickly, you can see this generational dysfunction of Maya's family that has impact, that may have caused and been not a causation, but a correlation of her mental illness and history of trauma. So again, we would like to challenge you to consider doing this for yourself. And I have, here's some tips for creating a genogram, and I'm not going to spend much time on this, but I just want to let you know that we've provided this kind of tips to get you started. At the end of the presentation, there'll be some resources where you can even actually go online and find some genogram software that will help you to develop one if you want to do it online, or you can actually just get a big piece of paper and draw it out if you prefer. So here's just some tips on how to decide how to do that and where you want to go with that. You can also be very much more in depth than what I did with Maya's genogram. So you can look at even health issues. You can look at histories of marriage and divorce. You can look at affairs. You can look at, again, abuse, neglect, substance use, mental illness. You can also look at history of pregnancies. You can look at a lot of different things to see these patterns. And the more detailed you are, the more you may see those patterns. But you may want to focus on a specific issue that you want to focus on. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rhonda now, and she's going to talk about challenges in family relationships.
Yes. So, yes, I'm glad to be with you all today. Again, I'm Rhonda Henry for folks that joined in a little bit later. And we're going to focus in this next section, especially around boundaries and communication. I think when it comes to some of the challenges and tools we can use most effectively, lots of them fall within those categories. So let me start with just kind of touching on some communication tools. A couple of those that have stars on them, we're going to go into in a little more depth in a few minutes. But let me just touch on a couple of these kind of basic ones just to start sort of building a toolkit. I think for many of the things we talk about, it's not that every one of these is going to apply to every family that's out there, but I think, as we get into this next section, really kind of queuing in and listening for, things that make you think, oh yeah, that's something I see in my family. That's something I deal with, in my relationships with family. And then maybe making a note of that or pulling that out. Like Kim said, there's a lot of for more resources sort of stuff at the end. So that way you can kind of point to the things that you're looking for. Some of the communication tools that can be useful as we're trying to continue to build and strengthen our healthy relationships in our family. One is taking time outs in conversations. And so this can be done in a real simple way. I think it's good if we can talk about this ahead of time and be able to just have some ground rules. If conversations get too intense, are we good with either of us kind of calling a timeout? And for us, does timeout mean we're going to step away for 10 minutes or for an hour or so, kind of let ourselves get our thoughts together, or decide what we're wanting to say, to take in the information maybe we've just heard, or do some emotional regulation. Typically, kind of the fair way of doing this is whoever calls for the timeout is also the one that re-engages. Okay, I've had a few minutes, I'm ready to kind of come back into the conversation, so that other person is given some direction about what's going on. This can be really helpful if we find, again, a lot of emotion coming up in a conversation, if we're coming across information that's new to us, or if we're sharing information that's new to the person we're talking to. This isn't something we've talked about before. This is a new topic. We may need a minute to kind of let that settle in, to get our thoughts in order, to get our emotions sort of in check. But consider, if you've never used those, kind of pulling in the idea of doing a timeout just to pause a little bit. And we're going to talk about pausing in general, again, in just a couple of slides. Being able, I think, to be committed to active and reflective listening. And what that means in practice, it means things like putting our phone down. It means making sure other things, other distractions are out of the mix for us for a little bit. It means making sure our body language is present. Are we nodding along? Are we kind of giving that emotion or that physiological sort of view that we're paying attention? We're turned toward the person we're talking to. We're using our hands. We're involved in the conversation. We're reflecting back some things that we're hearing. So we're able to say things like, ooh, okay, I hear you saying that you don't like when this goes on. Is this what you mean by that? We're able to really try to seek understanding. So being engaged in that way, even in hard conversations, it's going to make them feel more connected and meaningful. We're able to be vulnerable a little bit more when we're feeling like that other person in the conversation is really present and invested in us. Using things like standing times to connect can be useful. So things like, sometimes I'll hear folks talk about, just wanting things to be sort of organic. I don't want to have to set an appointment to go talk to my son, or I don't want to have to, set up time to go see my grandparents that way. I just want it to be organic, and I want to drop by, or I want it to flow. And that's lovely if that works for you and for the other person. But a lot of times other parts of life get in the way. We get busy, things distract us. We get in, habits and routines and ruts of other responsibilities. And we look up and it's been, 3 or 4 weeks since we talked to our sibling. Or it's been a while since we've actually stopped by our, to see our parents if we live close enough to have that option. So sometimes having standing times for things like phone calls or dinners together, even if it's something that's way far down the road, but something we know, okay, a couple of times a year we maybe do something. For some people, it may be every week we do this, and we have family dinner Wednesday nights. So depending on where we live and what those relationships are, having some standing times can just be a good way of making sure that we don't let, again, too much time get away from us. Let's talk about a couple of these. Oops, a second. Kim, let's go to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about this ask and guess culture. So some of you all may have heard of these phrases or heard this referred to. It seems like it comes up in social media. I'll see it maybe once a year or so, it'll kind of come back up. And I'm going to acknowledge it's a little bit of a difficult one to describe. And so I'm going to talk through this, but then I'm going to give an example that I think kind of ties it together and makes it make more sense. But this issue and this dynamic can be something that can really cause some issues within communication within any of our relationships. So folks that are coming from an ask culture or orientation, those folks tend to be more clear and direct. They're seeking certainty. They want a solid answer. Is this a yes or a no? I want to know where I stand on something. Sometimes, though, that may unintentionally come across as being rude or bossy or aggressive or insulting, a little too forward, in some ways. Some people feel like this kind of puts people on the spot. You ask me this really direct question. Now I'm having to kind of come up with an answer. Folks coming down from this orientation are often willing to exchange the discomfort of the conversation for the certainty of the answer. It might be hard to ask this question, but I just want to know where I stand. Is it a yes or a no? Do you have this or do you not? And so that certainty is really what folks coming from that orientation are seeking. Folks that are coming from more of that guest culture or guest orientation, much more likely to be observing, intuiting, they've got higher sensitivity, kind of taking things in around them, tend to be less assertive, but that can sometimes then come across as passive aggressive if needs aren't getting met. For folks coming from this orientation, they're avoiding that discomfort at the cost of clarity. Okay. So I may not know exactly what that person needs or wants from me, but I can't handle the discomfort of being really direct about this. Again, I'm going to give you an example in a second that's going to kind of bring some of these into focus. That avoiding discomfort at all costs, that tends to be kind of a hallmark of that guest culture. They may resent having to be in a position to even say no. Okay. So let me give you the example that kind of clarifies this piece, and then I'll give you a couple of thoughts about how to utilize this in your own relationships. So say that you've got two cousins. One cousin lives in New York and the other cousin is coming to visit New York. And the one who's coming to visit calls his cousin that lives in New York and says, "Hey, guess what? I'm finally coming to New York. I booked a trip. I'm going to get to come, see you and see the places you told me about." Cousin who lives in New York says, "Great, that's awesome. Where are you staying? What's the plan?" Cousin who's visiting is like, "Yeah, hotels are outrageous. Like, I haven't figured that out yet. I'm really excited though to see you, and maybe we can go to that restaurant you told us about." Cousin who lives there, "Yes, I want to take you to the place I told you about. That's great. Let me know when you're going to be in town." They both hang up or get off the phone or whatever. The cousin who's coming to visit, if they're coming from that guest orientation, may be left after that conversation feeling like their cousin who they're going to see isn't really that invested in them, because they floated some ideas. It's really expensive to stay in New York. I don't have that figured out yet. Coming from a guest culture, they may have been floating that out with the hope that the cousin who lives there would say, "Come stay with me. Let me help you figure it out," put out an offer in some way. Now, the cousin who's coming to visit never asked for that. They never said, "Man, I need you to help me figure this out. I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford to stay there. Do you know of a place I can stay?" He wasn't saying that. He just said, "Wow, it really is expensive there. I haven't figured that out yet." The cousin who he's coming to visit may have left that conversation feeling great. My cousin's coming to see me. He's figuring out where he's going to stay, where I'm going to take him to that restaurant I really like, and he feels all good. Do you see where the problem comes in here? Both with good intention, both wanting to see each other, but sometimes what we're talking about and what we're saying and what we're actually hearing and picking up, we're really missing each other. And so what I would suggest around this piece, if that resonates with you, like as I described that, if you see that showing up in your relationships, I think it could be helpful to think for yourself about, if I lean toward more of a guess culture or orientation, are there times that doesn't serve me? Are there times where I don't speak up for myself that maybe I would like to in a different way? Also, where are misinterpretations or assumptions caused because of this in my life? Some of us may have grown up in a really heavy guest culture. That may have been what our family of origin was really kind of how they function. We may get with a partner or meet friends or go away to school and really kind of shift our orientation and find ways to be more direct. Again, there's not a good or a bad within this, but it's a difference in communication style, expectations, and assumptions. And it definitely can get us in a place where we're interpreting things from each other in ways that were not intended. And we get a lot of miscommunication coming up in this. Think about what the dominant sort of orientation or culture was in your family growing up, and think about how that plays out now. Does that still come up? Does that still get in the way? But this is a place I see a lot of folks get kind of caught up in things. And I think understanding the dynamic and being able to engage in it and choose how you want to navigate it with your family can be really helpful. All right, next slide. Kim, next slide. Thank you. And then the power of the pause. So this is a fairly simple sort of strategy, but it is so powerful, you all. Like you will, if you've ever seen many of us in person, for one-on-one sessions or seen us in programming, you'll hear us talk about versions of this and how important it can be to slow down our responsiveness. No matter what's going on in a conversation, most of the time we are going to be served better if we slow it down a little bit. We give ourselves a minute, pick up your cup of coffee and take a drink. Take a breath or two before you say the first thought that comes through your mind. Step away for a minute, Let me take just a minute. Let me run to the restroom. I'll be back. Let me step out into the car and grab something I forgot. I'll be back. If you need those bigger spaces, a little bit more room, most of the time we're not at our best when we're reactive, when we're given that very first quickest thought, because a lot of our impulsive thoughts are based in fear and worry and what we can't do. Our brain has this negativity bias. So if we can slow it down a little bit, we are much more likely to actually hear what's being said to us and be able to respond in a way that we want to. So if you're looking for just kind of a really small strategy to start immediately, this is a really good one, just slowing things down a little bit. All right, next slide. So let's talk a little bit about boundaries. And we could do like an 8-part series on boundaries. Like there is so much you could talk about within this. And I think boundaries are a real challenge for a whole lot of us. I think for a lot of folks, it can feel intimidating. It can feel like a rejection of other people. I'm putting up walls, I'm pushing people away. And I think honestly, in my experience and work with folks one-on-one, if we can kind of get down to the core of what boundaries are about, what the purpose of them are, then it gets a little bit easier to actually put them into action. Like, how do I actually say these things once I can get grounded in understanding why am I doing this in the first place? So keeping in mind that boundaries are just these guidelines for how we want to be treated, how we want to treat other people. I like to think of it as a way of creating space to have a healthier relationship. Okay. And so what I mean by that is when we don't have boundaries, and we'll get into an example in a minute, but when we don't have boundaries, it tends to put more distance and more conflict in the relationship at a baseline anyway. So let's think about these kind of in these chunks. So the boundaries are sort of our guidelines, and they can be in all those different areas there. They can be time boundaries and physical and what we're going to do with folks. Lots of different areas they can show up, but they're limitations and rules and guidelines around how we're treating each other. Looking at this purpose piece, though, what is our purpose of the boundaries? The boundaries are there to create trust and safety. So the idea is, and the intention is to bring us closer to our people. And that may feel counterintuitive because, again, we're talking about boundaries. Aren't we putting up fences and keeping everybody at bay? But let's talk about an example in this because that's where I live and that's what makes this stuff make more sense to me. One of the most common boundary issues that I've heard probably in the last 4 or 5 years that comes up within families is around discussion of politics. Everybody's got different opinions, everybody's feelings are getting hurt, everything is really intense, and there's a lot of stuff out in the world about it. And sometimes families coming together with different views, boy, it can be a real place of conflict. And it can be a place where if we don't have some limits that we can put in place, regardless of what your orientation is around there, what your point of view is, but if we don't have some limits and guidelines there, we're going to start not wanting to spend time together. If I know every time I'm coming to get together for my Sunday, lunch at my grandmother's house, always is going to involve my Uncle John, who's got barely different ideas than I do, and he's going to rant and rave about it, I'm going to start not going. I'm going to start making excuses. I'm going to start pulling back. Or if I go, I'm not going to stay long. If I go, I'm not going to talk about a whole lot. And so if I don't set some limits and have some communication with that part of my family about what I need, the fallout is going to be this unintended distance regardless. If we can have some limits and some ground rules, our intention is to bring us closer, to help us avoid that resentment and distress and distance from each other. It promotes self-care, and really can help increase our confidence. We feel like we belong in whatever the group is that we're talking about. And it allows us to be ourselves, to maintain our integrity in those ways. If that's what our goal is to be closer to the folks that we're talking about, in our family, if we aren't able to find ways to set up or to speak up for what we need and to negotiate some of those limits, again, the fallout's going to be a natural distance that will occur. When we think about how to get over the hump of setting boundaries, I think that's, again, all of these things can be a challenge, and if this really resonates for you, if this is something where you feel like, yeah, this is something I've struggled with, but I can't quite get my head around, that might be a thing to come and talk to somebody like me or Kim about, or to dig into some of those resources, because it may mean that you need just a little more help kind of getting over that next hump. When we're trying to set boundaries and kind of getting our head around this, we start with the internal piece first. How do we get internal clarity about what I need? So using that example I gave, Maybe what I want and what I need is I want to be able to go see my extended family for 2 hours and have a meal and not have it blow up about politics. Like just talk about anything else except that. And that's what my goal is. If we're able to be straightforward, so I'm not going to go talk to, whoever it is I'm approaching in the family, whether it's my uncle directly or my mom or a grandma or whoever's getting talked to. I may not go to them and say, it's not going to be helpful to go to them and say, I just want us to have a better time when we all get together. I just want us to have a better lunch when we do our Sunday lunch. I just want us to enjoy each other more. Well, what does that mean? Because some people in that group might think they're enjoying each other just fine. Uncle John might think he's doing just fine, enlightening you about all the things in the world you need to know about. Can I get specific? Can I say for 2 hours from 12 to 2, can we just have a no politics at the table rule so we can all do that? If I want to leave at 2 o'clock, after that, I can head out, but get real specific when it's something we need. We don't have to apologize or justify. I don't have to break down why do I disagree with Uncle John about how we see the world. That doesn't matter. We're just saying, I want to know how he's doing. I want to know how grandma's doing. I want to know what so and so's doing in school or whatever's going on. We don't have to apologize or justify. We just have to say, I want more of this. This is what I'm asking for, what I need. Try not to make it punitive or punishing. Again, we don't have to rake Uncle John over the coals. He's always been a jerk. He's always going to be a jerk. He never lets anybody get a word in. We don't have to go there. It's just I want to spend time with you all and enjoy it. This is what I need. And then using our support system, y'all. And sometimes that might be coming to a therapist. Sometimes that's going to be talking to other family members that are kind of in the same headspace you are. Sometimes it's talking to people outside your family circle. It's talking to a partner or a friend and being able to say, oh my God, you'll never believe what happened this time, and getting a chance to debrief a little bit. So being able to get that internal clarity and communicate those things out. All right, next slide. I think it's important to keep this perspective that even when we are approaching these situations with kindness and respect and intention, everybody is not going to necessarily be on the same page. Some folks may be hurt or angry. Families are a system just like any other system. And just, for folks who have studied in that background world like Kim and I, systems don't want to change. You can have lots of well-intentioned individual people, but the system wants to maintain what it is. And so anytime there's change going on, we're going to talk about change again in another slide or two. Anytime there's change going on, the system works to keep things the same. And so when we're trying to disrupt something, when we think about that generational trauma, like Kim was pointing out in the genograms, or think about, traditions and ways we've done things that maybe aren't working so well for us, the system might want to keep it the same. Individual people may be open to those conversations and doing it differently. All right, next slide. I think this is another element, when it comes to, I think, especially within boundaries, of being able to recognize what we have control over and what we're putting our energy toward, where maybe we have concerns versus control. So when you look at this, many of us have seen sort of a version of circle of control. Your circle of control basic idea is, what's within your circle of control, what's outside of it. I really like this one. Kim found this graphic and I really like this one. And it pulls together this idea of circle of concern as well. Because sometimes there are things that are not within our control, but they definitely are on our radar or we might be concerned about them. And I think family relationships are just, rife with that. I mean, all sorts of things that we might have thoughts and concerns and opinions about, but they're not necessarily ours to control or to fix or to explain or any of those things. And so I think being able to acknowledge where do we have a lot of concern and is that where we're putting a lot of our attention? I'm worried about all these things going on in the world or in my family, but I don't have a lot of control over them. That's going to keep me in a pretty probably kind of elevated headspace. I'm going to be kind of spinning a little bit about worries, but I'm not necessarily going to have a lot of energy left over to take care of me, to take care of the things I need to do to take care of myself so that I'm not putting that burden on somebody else. If I'm able to hone more in on my circle of control, what things can I do to take care of myself, to be a better family member, to be a more attentive, daughter or partner, whatever those relationships might be. These are things that I've got some ability to control. It's where you're going to get more bang for your buck. Efforts I'm putting into this, I'm going to actually be able to make some change within. And it lets me focus on taking care of myself and being sort of the best sister, mother, partner, friend, all those things that I can be. Then that burden doesn't go on to somebody else. I'm taking care of me, you're taking care of you. I think when we look at keeping boundaries and being able to take care of our own stuff, this is one of those places where boundaries can get a little bit murky. Sometimes folks can feel like, but I'm just concerned about you. I'm just commenting on your weight and how much you're eating at Thanksgiving because I'm concerned about you. Well, maybe you should just be concerned about your body and what you're eating, and I'll be concerned about me and my body, and then we'll be good. So being able to kind of be aware of this, be aware of when this comes up for you, be aware when this comes up for other people in your family, and when this dynamic is kind of getting in the way of communication and boundaries, I think can be useful. Next slide. So when we think about that sort of clarifying boundaries, so those first steps we talked about on that third block over a couple slides ago, we want to be able, let me get my screen where I can see my slide. We want to be able to get that internal clarity. So thinking about what do I need? What do I want out of this situation? Again, not just I want it to be better, but as specific as we can get, if there's the specific thing we're asking for, positively stated. I want to be able to have a 2-hour lunch together on the weekends when I come by and not have it focus on politics, but just have us talk about what's going on in everybody's life. What am I willing to do? Well, I'm willing to have this conversation with, my Aunt Mary, who definitely is the one that helps kind of make these things happen. Or I'm willing to talk to my mom and see if she'll come in, and help me about this. Um, I'm willing to look at how I contribute to this. You know, if Uncle John's ranting and raving, what kinds of things do I do? Do I do things that contribute to that situation? Do I make comments? Do I roll my eyes? Do I do other things that are intentionally or not contributing to the negativity that I'm trying to sort of navigate? And then what is it I won't put up with? What are my hard boundaries? And for a lot of us, it's things like I'm not going to be called names. I'm not going to be cussed at. I'm not going to, have somebody act a certain way. It's okay for us to have hard limits of that's not okay. I'm willing to have a conversation. I'm not willing to do it this way. All right, next slide. So these last two that I'm going to be covering, talk a little bit about sort of transition times in relationships within families, or at least that's how I'm sort of framing this. So in this one, we want to talk about adult children and parents and just how that relationship can change. The next slide we're going to be talking about is in-laws. And I think in both of those kind of pockets of our family relationships, I think both of them come as part of change that goes on. And any time we're sort of facing change, and whether that kind of transition is, again, a child growing into adulthood, whether it's a big move that's happening, it might be a big job change that's affecting the family in bigger ways. Um, it very easily can be in-laws or even just significant partners, not necessarily even in-laws, but significant other people coming into the family. When those kind of transitions are happening, I think it is helpful if that can spark the question for all of us to think, what do I need to learn during this window? I've never parented an adult. What do I need to be learning during this window? I've never had a daughter-in-law or son-in-law before. What do I learn during this? I've never been a grandparent. What do I need to learn during this? So really thinking about those family transition times as vulnerable windows, where we've got the potential for our communication to get a little more rocky, or we've got the potential for feelings to maybe get hurt unintentionally, as we're trying to learn these new roles and new ways of communicating. And so these are just some tips around, parenting with an adult child that can be useful during those kind of windows. Being able to be, communicate as adults. And what does that mean for me? It means not always offering unsolicited advice. It may mean asking for the opinion of adult children, making sure they've got a voice in this as well, because they also have an equal stake in what's going on. Negotiating what the norms are, how do we do our holiday celebrations? Well, maybe we need to negotiate that now that my adult kid has a partner and they're trying to navigate their family stuff. So we're wanting to talk as adults, and be able to negotiate and figure out solutions to things, figure out what the problems are and potential solutions in partnership. Being able to kind of learn to hold on our boundaries. We've talked a lot about those. And I think, we've talked a lot in those last few slides about setting boundaries. I would also encourage you to really give some thought to what is it like when someone sets a boundary with you? If somebody approaches you to have one of those conversations, how does that feel? How do we manage our emotions so that we don't take that personally, but we really look for a solution that benefits both of us? Sort of taking initiative and maintaining the relationship. I think, especially with adult kids, it can be easy sometimes to think of sort of the home they grew up in as the castle, and like they're all going to come home to the castle, and that's a one-way road, and they all come here on my schedule, and that's not always going to work for our adult kids. And being able to kind of look at what does it look like to maintain that relationship. What does it look like for me to invest in where they live, to go meet their friends, to do things that have a lot of reciprocity, to maintain and really build that relationship, and not just have it come back to, well, I'm your mom and it's because I said so. Who wants that? Remembering, I think, that kind of circle of control, sort of owning the things that we can control and take care of, not taking on things that are not ours to boss or manage or to take care of. Practicing that pause, using those tools. practicing the pause, using the timeout, slowing down that communication, looking for those deeper connections, and those ways of modeling healthy behavior. For our adult kids, we want to model, okay, I'm ready to learn from this too. I want to also learn to be in this new relationship with you. All right, next slide. And I think, when it comes to in-laws, and like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to even be in-law, it can be serious partner, but someone else who's kind of coming in as a partner to someone in the family. I think it can be really a challenge when we're going into families. If we are the newcomer into a family system, we're trying to figure out what are the boundaries, what are the norms. I think when we're looking at boundaries, being able to do that in combination with our partner, if this is a family we have again married into or loved our way into, and we've come into a new family, working with our partner who's a member of that family to say, this isn't working for me, or I need you to back me up in some ways. So finding things that work for all of us. Again, that open communication, we've talked a lot about that. If we don't, if we kind of bury our needs, if we don't speak up for what we need, it is the birthplace of resentment and frustrations that are going to be problematic. I think having space for your own family. So, again, if you're someone who's hosting, maybe you're the parents or grandparents of adult folks who are coming back in, being aware, where's everybody staying? Do they have room so they can have some privacy? If they've got kids of their own, do I have space set up for that? If God forbid they want to stay at a hotel, can I handle that? Can we all be okay if we don't all stay under the same roof? So thinking about space and how important that is, because some of us need that, to be a good engaged family member. Let me tell you, I need some time alone and away from all those people. I love them, but I need a minute. Developing some of those strategies for criticism, and that might be things like humor. That helps for a whole lot of us. Being able to debrief with our people who get it, and later we're able to check in with a cousin or our partner and be like, oh my God, that was wild, and kind of debrief and have a little humor with it. Sometimes some of the strategies are having other people who get it, and are a soft place to land. And when we leave there, we can call somebody up or we can text them later and we can kind of debrief in that way. And then just managing some of those expectations around traditions. Again, we don't want to come in throwing everybody's traditions out the window. We want to respect some of that, but also knowing we've got to be able to have some fluidity and some flexibility. If we are adding people, if we're transitioning as a family, we've got folks who have people who are deployed for periods of time. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can make family transitions happen, but being willing to kind of come together and be flexible to kind of meet the moment. All right. Now I'll turn it back over to Kim on that note. Kim, you're muted.
Yeah, I figured that out like at the last second. So sorry about that. It happens at least once. Okay, so thank you, Rhonda. We're gonna spend the last few minutes of this talking about when you can't maintain a relationship, when it's time to maybe say no or say no more. And so in letting go. So I think what I want to start out by saying is, as adults, it is actually a choice to have a relationship with your family. It is not something you're required to do, whether it's your parents, your siblings, your extended family, or including your in-laws. When you're faced with ongoing toxicity in your adult relationships, it may be time to give yourself permission to let go. And this slide says you are allowed to terminate your relationships with toxic families. You're allowed to walk away from people who hurt you. You don't owe anyone an explanation for taking care of yourself. So I think in our society today, we talk a lot about people being toxic. They're so toxic. There's songs on toxicity. So let's talk about what it actually means to be toxic. So saying someone's toxic has become a real common statement. Your relationship may be toxic if it's characterized by behaviors that make you feel unhappy, disrespected, that have a basis in dishonesty, you feel controlled in, or you may feel a lack of support. So here is just a quick graphic that gives you more examples of this. So invalidating or ignoring your feelings. Do they blame you for things? Do they manipulate? Do they criticize? Do they become unpredictable with their moods and behaviors? Do they undermine your relationship with your spouse or your kids or other relatives? Gaslighting, that it's a very powerful form of manipulation. It makes you doubt your perception about what's going on. It's when they ask you or they refuse to compromise, or they make gossip or speak ill of you behind your back. Making unreasonable demands. They're always right and you're always wrong. You need to do this for us, but we're not going to help you in return. It could be even as on the extreme end of the continuum of maybe even threatening suicide or self-harm in order to get their own way. Creating drama or crises. You know, we all just went through the holidays, and holidays are always pretty stressful for families, no matter how functional you are. But when you have a toxic person in your family, they may make a habit of ruining holidays or special occasions by making it all about them. They may curse or yell or call you names. They don't take responsibility for their own behavior. Lots of passive aggressive behavior, such as the silent treatment or deliberate procrastination, even like criticism disguised as a compliment. Well, at least those pants don't show off your growing belly. You know, it can be some kind of like backward compliment. So, and then when you find that you're in relationships with people who tend to be this kind of toxic, you might find that it's time that even though you've tried to set boundaries, you've tried to communicate more openly, and all of those tries have been rebuffed, or the changes that you've asked for haven't been made, it might be time to determine to what extent you want to continue in that relationship. That's easier said than done. It's pretty hard to let go of a family relationship. There are a lot of pressures for that. First of all, because it's really hard to see their behaviors as abusive, particularly if you're talking about your family of origin. You were raised in that. That's how they've been. That's how they're always going to be. There's a lot of that sense of love and belonging can be skewed to the idea of we accept people for who they are. And that may mean that they're hurtful and we don't see it as abusive. And we know it's painful, but we continue to minimize and make excuses for their behavior. There may be some guilt related to this. Our family relationships are full of expectations. So, we're, raised, some of us have been raised to think that we're going to take care of our aging parents, or we're going to get along with our siblings no matter what. And we're going to spend all the holidays together or go on vacation. And while these are all really honorable beliefs, you have to realize that these are expectations that should only make sense in healthy relationships. Right? So in unhealthy relationships, honoring these beliefs may not be safe for you, either emotionally or even physically. And they're unfair and harmful when you're in a toxic relationship. It is not wrong or selfish to protect your well-being. And sometimes that means even distancing yourself from your family. Another one is this idea of family loyalty. And family loyalty is considered a virtue. In our society reinforces that. And the idea that you should be loyal to your family no matter what, right? Blood first. However, loyalty should be earned, and it's through that mutual respect and care that honors you as an individual and your right to think and feel differently from them. It should never be used as a way to control you. And in toxic or unhealthy family relationships, it tends to be used as a tool or a weapon to control. Another one is fear. So there could be fear in an abusive relationship of actual physical, emotional abuse, but also fear of the unknown. So if it's understandable that fear keeps you in these dysfunctional relationships, because sometimes the idea of ending a relationship, that fear of the unknown it can paralyze you. That the known, no matter how painful, may sometimes feel less scary than actually making the change. So what do? We keep doing what we've always done, no matter how painful. I love this quote from Brene Brown. You can choose comfort or you can choose courage, but you can't choose both. And it takes courage to end a toxic relationship. And the final one is love. Despite all the pain they've caused you, you may still love your family, but we can't love someone into being less abusive or toxic towards us. Sometimes love is simply not enough. Cutting ties may feel unloving to your family, but it doesn't mean you have to stop loving them. Sometimes we love people, but we can't have a relationship with them. So what does it mean to say no or to say no more? And that can really look different depending on the relationship. And there's a continuum. It could be something from so much as limiting contact or limiting the type of contact. And Rhonda gave some examples of that, all the way to cutting off all contact altogether. This is where creating those boundaries becomes even more necessary. And I want to talk a little bit about unannounced boundaries. We don't have to announce to the world that this is now our boundary. We can just live the boundary. So that may look like something like, you may clearly announce the boundary, like saying this is, what will won't. But that is the clearly stating what you're willing to put up with, what you aren't, and what will happen when your boundaries are violated. That's a very clear and specific verbally set boundary. Others may be unannounced, and they're like limiting how much time you spend with your family. You don't say, I'm going to spend less time with you. You just spend less time with them. Or it may be under what circumstances, like I don't accept invitations unless there's other people there so they can buffer me. It's not engaging in abusive conversations like Rhonda talked about. We can just walk out of the room. Or if if we're being cussed or yelled at, simply hang the phone up. Giving ourselves permission to do those things is setting a boundary internally. This is what I'm going to do. If this happens, I'm going to hang up the phone. It doesn't have to be, I will hang up the phone, and it doesn't have to be threats. I will hang up the phone if you don't stop. You can just simply hang the phone up. You may also want to seek therapy to identify strategies for not engaging in the negativity, because it is we get sucked back into those family roles so easily. Again, goes back to the idea of why we stay in this family relationships that are toxic for so long, is because it's what we've always known, and we get sucked back in so quickly. And so learning strategies or talking them through with a trusted friend or a therapist is a really good idea. And they can be part of that solid support system that can act as a buffer. They can go with you on visits, or they can sit with you while you're having a conversation, that weekly conversation with your family. You might act as your partner. I'm going to call my dad now. Will you just sit in here with me? And, if you see me getting frustrated, give me the high five sign. That's time to get 5 minutes and get off the phone. They can do things like that that will help you to kind of maintain during those interactions. And then they can also support you when you feel hurt and angry. But I also want to say that sometimes cutting off all contact is the best solution for you and your well-being. Oftentimes we will do this for our kids and our partners before we'll do it for ourselves. And as we start building that nuclear family, we may find that what we want, though, going back to that idea of core values and family values and our North Star, can I have the family I want and maintain these relationships with the family as it currently is? And so again, giving yourself permission to make that choice. Okay. So as promised, I'm going to go ahead and do this before I forget. I am going to drop into the chat box for you all a PDF of our PowerPoint. And of course, now I can't find it, but I'll find it real quick. All right. All right. Sorry.
Kim, while you're doing that, can I just mention a couple of things?
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
we've got 3 more parts to the series coming up, and Kim's going to be showing you a place to sign up for that. Lots of links here. I really encourage you, if things resonated with you, go into one of these areas and explore that a little more. Just lots of good resources. I mean, can't really say enough. We really were thoughtful and deliberate in what we were including in this page. Again, we've got 3 more sessions coming up that are going to continue to explore some of these issues. So you may hear boundaries talked about again, but it's going to be in different concepts, or within romantic partnerships or within friendships, that sort of thing. Sorry, Kim, go ahead. I was just trying to give you a minute there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I have shared this before 1,000 times, but it won't let me do it. So let's.
Well, what we can do is just send it out. So we've got this
Okay.
recording, so it's going to be posted as well. So if you want to go back and hear some of this again, or share it with someone, we're going to be posting that. But we can just send this out to the folks that signed up today, and send this out to y'all once we're done.
So I apologize for that. We will send that out so you'll have these links as quickly as possible. So again, one of all of the things that we promised we'd give you more information on are here. There's some podcasts, there's a few books we would encourage you to consider, and lots of resources, and including around building the genogram as well. This is all of our team. So you've met Rhonda and I today. Some of you all may already know Ann Bassoni and Eric Wilkinson, but they're the other two therapists that make up our Work-Life Connections team. And we want to encourage you to take advantage of the 5 free therapy sessions that are offered to UK employees by one of the 4 of us. You get 5 free sessions a year. You can use those any way you like. Some people you come a few times, other people come all 5 every year. It's really up to you. We provide those in either an in-person or a Zoom telehealth format. They're always confidential and they're free. And it's for any employee, sponsor, dependent, or retiree that's eligible. If you want to make an appointment, we have the QR code here, and we also provided you with a phone number in case you have any concerns or can't get registered, because it is a little bit of a tricky system, but people have been figuring it out. So maybe it's just us now that thinks it's tricky, but Julie, our wonderful administrative assistant, will help you. Will always be willing to help you Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30. A couple other things we included here was the Individual and Relational and Financial Therapy Clinic, or IRAFT, also formerly known as the Family Center or Family Clinic. It offers individual and couples counseling, and it's only $25 per session for households of UK employees, which is it's less than most of our copays. So it is just a really good option. And then we included UK elder care resources and the UK employee parenting supports as well. And then any of our health and wellness resources can be found at that link that we've provided there. And as Rhonda said, thank you so much for joining us again, January 23rd, part 2 for friend relationships. And when you receive this PDF of our slides, you'll be able to click on the registration link there and get yourself registered for the next one if you haven't done so already. And that takes us pretty close up to time. Any last thoughts, Rhonda?
Not that I can think of, I don't think. I mean, I think you did a good job wrapping us up. So, I guess my only last one I'd say is if you're wanting to explore and dig deeper into some of these specific areas, feel free to set up that time with one of us. If you want to do a genogram, like Kim and I've done those with folks, come on in. Like we can do one of those together and talk about what that brings up. So, there's lots of little sort of seeds we wanted to plant. So whatever resonates for you, let's explore it more.
All right. Thank you guys so much and have a great rest of your day.
Yes.